Hey everybody, welcome to Church at Home with Rachel for Wednesday. Today I'd like to share with you from Bear Grylls' Soul Fuel. The devotion is called Jump. A story that Pastor Nicky Gumbel once told took place during World War II in the terrible days of the Blitz, when a father holding his small son by the hand ran from a building that had been struck by a bomb. In the front yard was a shell hole. Seeking shelter as quickly as possible, the father jumped into the hole and held up his arms for his son to follow. Terrified, yet hearing his father's voice telling him to jump, the boy replied, "I can't see you." The father called to the silhouette of his son, "But I can see you. Jump." The boy jumped because he trusted his father. In other words, he loved him, he believed in him, he trusted him, and he had confidence in him. And this is taken from Psalm 91, verse 3, from the interpretation called The Message by Eugene Peterson. That's right. He rescues you from hidden traps, shields you from deadly hazards. His huge outstretched arms protect you. Under them, you're perfectly safe. His arms fend off all harm. And then Bear goes on to say, trust your Heavenly Father's promises for your life. Trust that He has you, that He is in control, and that your future is secure in Him. Knowing these truths leads to courage, calm, confidence, and power. I find that really powerful in my own life because I have come over the years, long, hard learnings, come over the years to really begin to understand how important that trust thing is. And also understanding that what I was hope would be the outcome isn't necessarily what God's necessarily isn't what I would want. I think this would be the best for me isn't necessarily what God's planning or hoping for me. And that's a difficult truth because I think I know me. Who knows me better than me? Even my husband doesn't know me as well as I know myself. And I think of these things, I know these things, but there are times when we're called to trust one beyond ourselves. For instance, I don't talk about this much, but for those of you who know that I've been elected Bishop of Brandon, you may not know that 3 years ago, my name was on the ballot for the Bishop of Edmonton. And I don't know what I was thinking. I allowed my name to stand. I didn't go seeking it. Um, but when someone said, I know like somebody that I know and care about suggested that maybe my name would be a good name, and I don't think it was a bad name. But when they called and said, "Would you allow your name to stand on the ballot?" I said yes. I did a lot of praying, just as much as I did about allowing my name to stand for the ballot in Brandon. And I did the hard work, and throughout that, I had a sense that this was all for naught. This wasn't going to happen, and even so, it was still embarrassing to be, to come off the ballot. I took myself off the ballot the first round of votes. I didn't need to yet, but I would have come off the second round anyway. So I did it. It was more about saving face. I'm embarrassed to say, but looking back on that, I was pretty sure, like I was 99.9% sure who was going to be elected. I'd done a lot of praying, and the name that kept coming to me was the one name, Stephen London, who became the Bishop of Edmonton. And it was very humbling for me because in my prayer time and in my discernment, I realized that the gifts that I had for ministry were not the gifts that were needed for that position at that time. That if had been elected, which wouldn't have happened, but if I had, I would not have been the right person. And it took me a good year or so to really hunker down with that and realize that, well, I followed God's will. I believed that God was saying, yes, indeed, let your name stand. Go through the process, answer the questions, do the work of allowing your name to stand. I felt angry with God because at the end of that, I took a jump. I leaped into the dark air and not knowing I couldn't see anything, not knowing where I'd land, and it felt like I fell flat on my face. The truth is I didn't. The truth is I didn't. I fell into a space that allowed me to become more humble, that allowed me to consider what that might all have been about. Was I just being arrogant? Was I just thinking, was I just being some uppity little girl who thought, I could do this? Or was there a greater purpose? And I do think that in the end, and this is what I've come to discern, is that Coming from a diocese that had two female priests, female bishops in a row, had my name not been on the ballot, there wouldn't have been any women on the ballot. And what does that say? What would it have said about our diocese if no women had the courage to say, I'm testing the call. I'm discerning whether or not I'm called to be a leader in this diocese. But if it had only been men, what might that have said to other women coming up after me? What might that have said to other people looking at the church and seeing, is it just an old boys club? Now, I absolutely believe the right person was chosen, that Stephen is an excellent bishop and he will continue to grow into that role. But when God called me to jump, when God said to me, I want you to do this work, you're not going to win. You are not going to be a bishop, not in Edmonton. But I want you to jump anyway. I had no idea why. And I'll be honest, I spent a fair amount of time pretty angry about that and embarrassed and wondering, what was that all about? Until I realized that in the rest of my ministry, the whole process of discernment, the questions I was asked to consider, the essays that I wrote, the thinking ahead about this diocese and those things, was preparing me not necessarily to become the Bishop of Brandon, but was preparing me to be a better priest in the place where I was serving. In the long run now, looking back in hindsight over 3 years, I see absolutely that experience helped me in my experience when I allowed my name to stand in Brandon, obviously. But it wasn't about God preparing me to be a bishop. It was about God saying, trust me, so that you can be more and better at what you are doing right now. When that father asked his son to jump, the father could see the son's silhouette. The child couldn't. The child had to trust. When I allowed my name to stand both times, I had to trust that God could see more than I could. I couldn't see what was happening. I couldn't see what the outcomes would be, but God could. Was it easy? Absolutely not. That first Episcopal election that I stood for was probably one of the most difficult things I've ever done in my ministry. And I've done a few difficult things. But it was also one of the most powerful things I've done for my growth. Because I trusted God. I followed God's instructions and I jumped into the unknown. And I didn't find myself battered and bruised. My ego was. And those parts of me that need to be rubbed off so that the good parts can shine, they were battered and bruised. But the essence of who I was wasn't. The essence of who I was landed safely in my Father's arms. God received me after I had the courage and the trust to jump. And God said, this isn't a no, it's a not yet. There are times in all of our lives when it doesn't feel like God is there, when it feels like everything we have done, even when we've been trying to be faithful to God, God has somehow disappeared, and yet here we still are. Maybe a little battered and bruised, maybe our egos are a little bit scuffed, maybe our egos are torn to shreds. Maybe that's not a bad thing. But in the end, we are still here. And if we look around, we will find the experiences that we've had, the people we've met, the lessons we've learned, the lessons we've helped teach, have all made us a better person. They've made us better able to deal with what comes next. God has not promised us a rose bed, a rose garden, as that Tammy Anderson song from years ago, one of my first favorite pieces of music. I never promised you a rose garden. Along the way, there's going to be some thorns and there's going to be rain some days. The truth is, we get the roses, but we also get the thorns that go with it. But isn't that what makes it really beautiful? I am living into something that 3 years ago I really never would have guessed or predicted or believed I could live into. But I also recognize that the past 3 years and some of the tough stuff I've been through are the very things that have made me more ready to jump into my Father's arms in a new way. We are all being called to stand on the edge of that precipice and listen to God saying, jump, my child. I can see you. Trust me. And when we jump, God will be there. I promise. Have a great day. God bless. And I'll see you again tomorrow for Church at Home with Rachel.